School board meeting. Tonight we will have a special school board meeting and then go into executive session at the end. So please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item C, communications and correspondence.
I have none.
Item D, public participation. Those that would like to submit comments can send those to our board member Elizabeth Alteri at ealteri@ellsworthschools.org. Those submitting comments are asked to provide their full name, please. Item E, under new business, discussion and consideration of approval of bids for a Chromebook lease. And I believe everybody got that information from Dan.
Yes. Finance Committee met last week to look at, and this is a 3-year lease for Chromebooks to replace the current allocation that we have at Ellsworth High School. The bid is for 525 Chromebooks from Dell. Our technology director and her team have vetted these and gotten 3 bids for financing. The recommendation that was made to the Finance Committee was to look at the 3 bids. One from Gorham Leasing, one from Dell Financial Services, one from First American. The recommendation is to go with the bid from Gorham Leasing, which was the low bid, also provided the option to purchase the allocation at the end of 3 years for $1, which is what we're doing with this allocation, and we tend to redistribute those. So that's the short of it. Certainly your Finance Committee members are here, and our IT director is here, if you want to get really technical with her. But I think she did a thorough job. I think she did an excellent job.
Yes, I agree. It was a very thorough presentation and.
Right. I was very comfortable with the numbers she put out there. I thought it was a very good bid, actually.
And the opportunity to purchase them after is always great too, because like Dan said, it can be redistributed, and that's happened in the past, which is helpful,
Right.
so.
So the way that the lease works, in looking at this, it's 3 annual payments, so this will go into the budget for the next 3 years.
Yep. And actually, for the last several years, there has been a payment in there. This is
Just a
moving
different
that forward.
Moving
Yeah.
forward, yep.
Yeah.
And
Well,
this first payment is coming out of the FY21 budget.
Okay. Yeah, and technology changes so quickly that you, like, if you purchase a laptop, a Chromebook, it's apt to be no good or less good in 3 years anyway, so.
Mhm.
We have found they've worked very well for us, and so I think the IT department and their staff did a great job.
Yep.
I agree.
So, Mr. Higgins, so there's 650, so high school kids, which grade
It's-
levels
it's
are these
It's
going
actually,
to?
and notice that, it's 525.
It's 525.
That was an initial bid that was put up, 525 based on our enrollment.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah,
In fact, if you look at the Gorham document, it references 525.
Okay.
yeah.
Yeah.
Any other discussion? All right, I'll make a motion to approve the 3-year Chromebook lease bid and financing from Gorham Leasing as recommended by the Finance Committee.
I'll second that.
Any other discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you, and I know Ms. Johns is probably thanking you as well, and she's probably going to be ordering them either before the night's over or tomorrow.
Right,
We thank Ms. Johns for her hard work.
that's right.
Yes.
Well done. Item number 2 is consideration of authorizing the Finance Committee to act on behalf of the school board in the months of April and May.
And this is a request I spoke with the Finance Committee about. This is so that in the event of purchases, and we're going to have some coming up, particularly with the ESSER funds as we determine how to use them, and if we can bring that committee together much easier than we can bring together the full board, go through that process and get those pieces done, we can get things ordered and in place much quicker. So that's the reason for the request.
And it's pretty important too, because as we've learned, when something is in high demand,
It's
Yeah.
true.
time is of the essence.
And there is an emergency clause, so to speak, in the policy that we have where if you need something quickly, if it's the only vendor that you have or something of that nature, you can go ahead and make the purchase. But this just gives us the opportunity to bring the Finance Committee back into it.
Absolutely.
I make a motion to approve the authorize the Finance Committee to act on behalf of the school board in approving purchases bids in the month of April and May.
I'll second that.
Okay, thanks. Any discussion?
I have a question.
Sure.
Could possibly the documents that go out to the finance committee go to the entire board so we can see? So if there's some
Sure.
red flag, we can reach out?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah,
Thank you.
let's see why not. Thank you. Any other questions or discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Thank you.
Item number 3, consideration and approval of the proposed FY22 Ellsworth School Department budget.
Okay. You should all have the information hot off the presses at about 2 this afternoon. Jen, it was interesting. Happened to see your email, and I was just hitting save on that piece, so excellent timing. But as you know, back on April 13th, had a very detailed presentation of the budget. Also met with the Finance Committee, I believe it was the 22nd. Paul and Jen, correct me if I'm wrong. And emailed all of you some of the changes that we discussed there. So for the most part, the changes from 2 weeks ago to this evening are reflected in, number one, the CTE budget. Cybersecurity program, we were able to formalize that. We will have an instructor working virtually from University of Maine Augusta so that we can have a part-time ed tech position in the facility with the students, so that reduced the cost. And what that reduced the cost from was about $136,000 to cost of $91,647.46. That includes the instructional piece, that includes changes to facility supplies and equipment. The other piece that changed, and this will be part of your approval of the budget, unfortunately, the Marine Trades Program, which got off to a good start at MDI, had a really small turnout for enrollment. So MDI is looking to suspend that for a year. The HCTC Advisory Committee voted to concur with that. So that's a $66,950 allocation that comes out of this budget. So that's one of the biggest differences you see. And when you suspend it for a year, that leaves it available, much like we did with the cybersecurity program this year. So it can be brought back next year if we do get enrollment. So that's one of the biggest changes, and you'll notice in CTE, we now have an increase of about $40,000 as opposed to about $150,000. The other place where there was changes, I mentioned in the email this afternoon, in doing our nickeling and diming exercise, and I like to say that because it's fun.
Well, it worked.
It's fun
right,
to
Paul?
do. But we actually found a
It's kinda
couple of
different.
pieces that were included in one of our federal title budgets that was in the local budget. So we were able to reduce those lines. The remainder of the differences from what you saw 2 weeks ago falls on the revenue side. Couple of pieces. One, with the suspension of the Marine Trades Program, the allocation that we were supposed to receive, I initially thought that we needed to take all of that out. However, when you look at the intricacies of the formula that funds CTE, by taking that out, it gives you a different ratio of your actual expenditures and what the model provides for funding, and there's a hold harmless in there. What we needed to factor in was the 2/3 hold harmless. So it was a much smaller reduction. So that helped on the revenue side. That keeps our CTE allocation at $1.691 million. That is a positive. The other pieces that we are looking at doing and recommending in this budget are to use $35,000 of the CTE fund balance to offset expenditures, and to use $35,000 of the adult education fund balance to offset expenditures. So that really addressed the revenue side. One thing I would ask you to look at is the CTE assessment line. And again, I'm on the spreadsheet. I think you guys are too. You'll notice that is at $26,000. It was a much higher figure the last time. When you apply that fund balance to offset expenditures at CTE, that reduces the difference between the total budget and what we get from the Department of Ed. The other piece is we reduce the budget by the ways that I just described. So that made that amount go down. As far as, I think the other pieces that we do want to mention, I mentioned the fund balance. The other pieces, this isn't the recommendation that you're voting on tonight, but we are recommending out of the fund balance to create a special education reserve, a minor capital reserve, and an HCTC minor capital projects reserve, and we can address that later. But that would come out of the larger fund balance because we did not expend as much funding this year. The other piece that I think it's important to note, with food services, we really worked hard on this. With food services, you'll see that there's an increase of the amount of money that we're asking the city to provide to support the program. The biggest reason for that is because we appear to, well, we're likely to run a deficit this year because we're in the hybrid model. I think I mentioned at the last meeting. You roughly have 40 to 50% of the students that you have in our buildings on a daily basis. So you have fewer students actually eating lunch and the revenues were down. You still need to have your staff there. So we had a fortuitous development. One is the fact that we were sent notice that we're going to receive $52,000 in emergency funding to offset some of the expenditures. So that's going to help. But even with that, and even with this request from the city, we're still looking at having to likely bring about $93,500 from fund balance to make that program whole for this year. Now, we still have the remainder of this month, and all of May, and a short part of June, where we're going to have the majority of our students in school. We'll see how those revenues pan out, but right now, that's what we're projecting. And again, there's nothing that you could do about that, other than being in school fully all year long. So I think the pieces that people are really interested in, the major components of the budget that we talked about at the last presentation are still part of this budget. Staffing to meet enrollments, shifts, trends, and student needs, address increased needs for students. I also want to mention that with the ESSER 2 and ESSER 3 funds that we've received, we're looking at right now, because we're still looking at the final parameters of how we can expend that, additional interventions and support for our students to help with learning recovery, and that's one of the things that we're being advocated to use the funds for, but also additional supports for social, emotional, for our students and for our staff. So those are two pieces that are going to be part of that larger piece of funding that we're still working on for the fall and for the summer. When you approve this budget, hopefully you will, you're also approving the cybersecurity program being added. That goes along with that. So with all of that being said, I'll kind of bring it to a close so people know what the numbers are, and then I'll entertain any questions that you might have. With all that we've included in the budget, and I commend everybody for their hard work on it, including adult education, the projected expenditure side of the budget is $23,680,977.67, which is an increase of $721,182.25 over proposed expenditures from last year, which is a 3.14% increase. When you run down through the projected revenues that we have, and I didn't address this, but I want you to look at your tuition revenue line. I apologize for missing this. We're projecting a larger increase. Updated these numbers today, and when we look at the number of students coming into our freshman class, we look at the number of students planning to come to HCTC, and again, we know that with the total enrollment numbers that we have right now, historically those numbers go down, so we've factored in an historical perspective of that. That has shown an increase, and we also have an increase in the number of bridge students who attend. So that in our bridge program that's been highly successful, students who might come from another high school where they would pay a per pupil assessment to attend the HCTC portion of the program, they're doing their bridge component of the program at Ellsworth High School, so there's a tuition payment that goes along with that. That's also factored in here. And we also did an estimate on special education, so we're looking at an increase of $152,000 in tuition for next year, which I think is great. That's fantastic, particularly in a pandemic year. So with all the revenues that we're talking about, what we're looking at is a total local appropriation for the city of Ellsworth of $11,566,605.75, which is an increase of $6,364.91, or 0.06%.
Awesome.
It seems
Yeah.
like a remarkably small increase.
It
Yeah.
does, yeah.
Especially with the pandemic and everything.
Absolutely. And the
It's hard to be-
uncertainties to
Yep.
funding and to expense and not knowing.
And adding the, cybersecurity, which is really exciting. I
Yes.
hope the public sees it as
Yeah.
wonderfully, the opportunity it is.
In cybersecurity, but also the 504 coordinator.
Absolutely.
Also, grade 7 teacher, a music teacher for both of our schools. Spanish will now be full-time at the high school. Some things
There's
that
a
we've
lot
been
of-
advocating for the past couple of
Yeah.
years, so.
I think that's the interesting piece, and I commend everybody because the balance that ended up happening really did check all the boxes for the needs for this year. And then, so it was really nice to see the new things that will be coming and for helping students, but that it all worked out in the end and without a large increase, which
Right.
I think the taxpayers will be very thankful.
And this really helps prepare our students beyond
It does.
just their years at Ellsworth. I mean,
And that the math interventionists found their way into other
Yes.
programming, which will, other funding, excuse me,
Yes.
which will help. Because, like we had said before, it's a great way to see how that's gonna work and collect that data, and then moving forward, we'll have some ideas on that, so.
On an unrelated but possibly related note, Laura, Mr. Wood sent us an email asking if we can unmute the session for their Zoom link. I don't know what that means,
Oh, thank you.
but hopefully
Beth.
you do.
Thank you. Yeah, that's great. Super. Thank you very much, Dan. I appreciate the hard work that went into this because the nickel and diming had not happened when Paul and I and Dan met, so it clearly went well. All the little pieces.
Now, Dan, could that, that increase is so tiny, but could that change based on the tuitions, or will that just go into?
Well, I think that's
like
probably a good
additional.
question, not just for now, but also for the procedure moving
Yeah.
forward. Once you take your action and authorize submission to the council, I believe it's at their May 17th meeting, that they will take this up. This budget won't change unless there's action taken at the council where they vote to make a change to the bottom line, which they could.
Okay.
If they don't, it then goes to the voters. I believe it's on June 8th or June 9th.
Yes,
I'm not
I
sure which
believe
day it is. And the voters can vote. If they vote to approve the budget, this is what goes in, and with your tuition, this is what we're projecting. We won't know until the end of next
Right,
year.
until it happens.
Yeah.
We won't know until
So-
it happens.
So that amount won't change. If we find out that revenues, like with the food service program this year, that revenues are not keeping up, or that we have an unanticipated expenditure, we're gonna have to make do within that budget, or go back to that unanticipated balance or one of those reserves.
Okay, until next year when everything kind of,
So longer answer to the
Does
question
all
you're
of
asking. Longer answer to the question you're asking, but no, that amount won't change unless the budget gets changed in the next two
Meetings.
next two meetings, the
Yeah.
council meeting on the 17th and the budget validation referendum.
okay. And I am going to forward an email, probably, I'll include everyone, but specifically for you, it was a question that someone had about where the COVID funds were used, and I think that would be better answered via email, because it's probably going to be a lengthy type of response, so I'll just send that along.
Oh, sure, and I know Rachel was working on a document for that, so.
Okay,
Yeah,
perfect.
That's fine, thank you.
Awesome.
Mr. Higgins, I just have a quick question. Do we know, so so we're increasing Spanish at the high school by 0.5 FTE. Is the current Spanish teacher who's half-time but also doing gifted and talented, is she going to do Spanish full-time? Or do we know what's going to happen there?
That is the likely intent, and then we'd be looking
Okay.
for another GT person.
And the GT person it'll be a half-time
Yeah.
position? Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, I'll make a motion to approve the FY '22 Ellsworth School Department budget as presented and authorize submission to the Ellsworth City Council.
I second that motion.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
So, Beth, do you have any other comments before we move into the other? No. Okay. So what we're going to do is go to item F and do calendar and announcements and adjourn, and then we'll be going into executive session.
And we won't be coming back
And we won't be
after.
coming back out, exactly. Yep. So, let's see. The next school board meeting is Tuesday, May 11th, 2021, 6 o'clock here in the City Hall Council Chambers. And then our next workshop is Tuesday, May 25th, 2021 at 6 o'clock as well. And I believe that is it. Any other discussions? I'm going to make a recommendation, having no further business, to adjourn this. Oh, did you have one more? item?
No, procedurally, I think you want to vote to
All
go
right.
into executive
I'm sorry.
session.
That's
Oh.
right. We just won't be coming back.
That's the only, that's the
after
only
vote.
action you'll take when you come out, is to adjourn the meeting. There won't be any other action for the public. But
Perfect.
yes, a vote to go
thank
into
you.
executive session.
Thank you. All right. So take a vote to go into, a motion to go into executive session.
I'll make a motion that we go into executive session to discuss the climate surveys per 1 MRSA 20A 4056B.
I'll second that.
All those in favor?
It is 6:21.
We are now headed into executive session. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank